the rhythm, catching every beat. Together we embrace the futures at our feet. The futures at our feet.
Well, good evening and good day, good morning, whatever time of day you are recording. It is wonderful to be with you for another episode of the Edufuturists podcast. We are joined in the studio by a wonderful human being from a very different time zone for us. And we are looking forward to this conversation and very much looking forward to Meagan introducing herself, telling us a little bit about what she does. So, Meagan, tell us a little bit about you, and then I don't really care how you've been, Steve. We do that most weeks, so we'll just...
I'm all right. Nothing's changed. Still as boring. Fine.
Me too, but I don't get to see you guys very often. So my name is Meagan. I am a teacher, educator, all of the things, but I'm over in Canada, which is very far away from you. It's a long plane ride. I know because I was just flying over it not too long ago for that Innovate conference that we did not too long ago, Ben. So I specialize in STEM and science education, mostly with elementary, middle school. So for me, that's anywhere from age 6 to 13, 14 or so. So all of the science, all of the STEM, but I've taught everything, every subject area. So I just try and fit it in wherever I can. They just don't have a choice. It's going to happen.
And we first met in 2019.
We did.
At our Google Innovator Academy in Stockholm.
No, I was London.
Was you London?
Yeah. So you met Jess?
I met Jess.
And then I know Jess because she lives in my province. Mm-hmm.
And then we met so we didn't meet in Stockholm. I'm telling a story that doesn't exist. I just made it up. Absolutely wonderful. I've been caught in a lie. But no, so I knew then, me and Jess met in Stockholm and we were introduced on Twitter in the Future Innovator Coaches group and all those kind of bits in terms of that's where it came together. And then I was like, I must have known you before. And then we actually met in February 2020 before the world went quiet for a bit.
Yeah.
And presented at the Southeast Alberta School District Conference, the leaders there.
Teacher conference for Southern Alberta. Yeah, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but yeah, we ran a session together and that was so fun. Yeah,
it was good. But yeah, I remember you drove the whole way across. You were pretty tired and then ran the session. I also remember that you had tiny shoes on, I think, and it was snowing, as if snow was a normality to you and Jess, and isn't over here.
I know, we're always shocked when it happens, but it happens all the time. No, I was supposed to fly because I live like 7 hours away from there because Alberta is long and big. So I was supposed to fly and my flight got canceled and it was like, do I go or do I not go night before? So I drove. I think I left the airport at 5 p.m. and I got to Medicine Hat at like 2 a.m. And then woke up, did conference with you guys, directly got into my car and drove back home. 7 hours.
But you were on it more than I was.
That sounds like commitment. I think I do think in on that North American continent, like time is just like is a social construct. Like we think if we have to drive an hour to a conference, if we have to drive, it's 3 hours on a train for us, 2.5 hours on a train for us to London. Yeah. Oh, that's a long way to go. And you just said you've done that. And I suppose when you've got a country that's as big as Canada, then you don't have much choice, right?
If you want to go anywhere, you're going to drive. You're going to drive to it. Because even here, like I could drive 2 hours and see the exact same thing that I am currently seeing right now. It's just flat. But if I want to hit anything interesting like a mountain, 3 hours and we're good to go.
It's like us on the seabed, maybe.
Well, no, not quite, because for both, like it's 40 minutes for me to the sea. Not for you. It's a bit longer, isn't it, Steve? For you,
about an hour and a half. Yeah,
hour and a half. So yeah, we can see sea, but the sea that I then see in 40 minutes is Blackpool. Now I don't know if you've been to the northwest of England, Meagan. Blackpool is like it's famous for things like seagulls and chavs. Yeah.
That is, but it sounds.
Chav. You don't know what a chav is? I'm going to introduce you. A chav is a very interesting type of human being who. How do you describe a chav? Like,
thanks for all the Blackpool listeners that have completely just and have turned off and will never listen to us ever again. But not all people from Blackpool are a chav. But chavs are people that would maybe wear full tracksuits, Nike Air Max.
You know the guys, yeah.
Probably gold chains and
we've got those. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
What would you call? What would you call them in Canada?
They're called Mounties.
No.
They're police.
No.
Yeah, I'm joking.
Oh, they live about 20 minutes that way, downtown Edmonton.
Okay.
They know
What
who they
are they called? Downtowners? What are they called? What's
well, there's downtowners, and then there's downtowners, the people who just live in downtown. This is going in a
yeah. I don't know where we're going, but it's fun.
So,
it's interesting. Yeah. But let's get into education.
Canada's a really interesting place. So I suppose let's spin it on its head for whether you're a downtowner, or whether you're just a Meagan. That, in terms of education, your place in education and the stuff that you've pushed in regards to STEAM and STEM and all of those kind of things, and all the wonderful things, I think you're involved in that makerspace, all that kind of stuff into the detail.
All of it.
How long have you been promoting it against the tide, or actually is it more open in Canada in terms of that approach, or have you seen a shift since COVID? Tell us about your journey and also that space, maybe.
That's really interesting because I would say that it was definitely against the tide at the start. So I've been doing it since the beginning. I actually, Ben, at Innovate, you did your keynote with Ken, and you were talking about your ADHD. So I didn't find out that I had ADHD until much later. But when I found out and I was diagnosed, it all made sense. I was like, yeah, okay. So I was the kid I wasn't hyperactive, but I was very, very spacey, and I built stuff all the time. I was always building random stuff, and my parents were very enabling for the building. It's good. So I had all the power tools and things like that, and they taught me how to use them because I grew up sort of in a rural area. So I was just running around in the trees all the time, making forts, left with my own imagination. They didn't know where I was, perfectly safe, more or less. Who knows? And then that sort of carried on through school. I always felt a little bit different, not always in a social aspect, but I just sort of had my own fleeting interests that would change all of the time. And as I became led towards education, I started to connect in my teaching practicums with those kids who maybe couldn't sit, or those kids who had these big ideas that just happened like really fast. You know how you get that idea and it's like an explosion in your head and you're just like, oh, and you have to do it right away. I loved those kids, and they were seen often as disruptive in the classroom, but I knew that if I just gave them just the most minimal of materials, they would come up with something really cool that actually showed that they understood what was going on. So I learned really quickly that it wasn't that they weren't listening. And that was the same for me. I was listening, but I already knew it. I had learned it really fast and now was ready for the next thing, or something like that. So for me, when I became a teacher, that whole having kids build, having kids make, having kids create was sort of my driving force. It was really important to me early on, and it was seen, as I mentioned in my keynote, I did one kind of about the importance of fun in the classroom. It was seen as childish or like a waste of time. So like, well, can't they just write you a paragraph? Or, oh, you're spending so much time on this. But what I felt like was the kids were way more engaged in whatever we were doing. And you can make things for anything. It was great in language arts. It was great in social studies. We had to learn about the different kinds of government systems. So I actually brought in gummy bears, and they had to make the government systems. So like oligarchy and democracy and dictatorships were always my favorite. Not to get too political, but gummy bear size, it was pretty hilarious. So we would do things like that or make stop motion movies to kind of show what we knew in another way. And I felt like I could get more kids that way. So at the start, definitely pushing against the teachers. I did a lot of PD for them that they may or may not have cared about, but they were like, okay, like you just go over there, do your cute little games and your fun and your shenanigans, and we'll do the real work. So I kind of resented that for a long time. And then I would say throughout the past 5 years, I've noticed a shift. So we're starting to kind of realize that there are different kinds of learners. And not just like the learning style stuff, but like actually everybody learns differently. And that multimodality kind of aspect is really, really beneficial for learners. And that you don't have to have a big makerspace cabinet to do it, especially like with the digital stuff, Tinkercad, things like that. There's so many things that you can do just with your Chromebook or whatever you have. So yeah, I would say a shift.
Yeah, I totally agree, and we talk on the podcast quite a lot. And actually, we've got a guest coming up who's talking about this one size fits all. Literally means one size fits none. We say that all the time. That if you have a classroom this is the only way you can be assessed. This is the only way that you can be taught. This is the only way that you need to sit in rows. That like it works for some, but it doesn't work for everyone. And I love that what you were talking about there, finding ways. That's the phrase that I heard you say, finding ways. And I thought that's exactly what we as educators, anybody that's could talk about their teachers fondly, their favourite teachers, they found ways to engage you in Shakespeare. They found ways to make history fun. They found ways to connect what you were learning to something that really mattered to you, to do a practical thing so that you could show what you like. I love that you said that, finding ways. And where does that? I think you mentioned there that it came out of your own experience, that as a kid you were enabled in that. I wonder if your parents helped in that space, help you find ways. But why does that matter? Because if we could, surely we can just drill people and they'll learn.
I think it depends when people say things like that. Like I had a co-teacher once who was talking about math facts and speed and things like that. And she's like, well, if you like, sure, they'll learn it your way, but if we drill them, they'll learn it. And I'm like, okay, but my question after that is always like, what does learn mean to you? Right? So does learn mean that they know it and can recall it, or does learn mean that they can use it in a whole bunch of different situations? Because that's what learn means for me. And so like, especially now, I feel like with there's so much automation and so much AI and so many things that can help us do things easier, but also do a lot for us. I think our role as educators is to help kids create more than they consume. So that's kind of, for me, when can I have kids create rather than just consume the content that I want them to learn?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that really defining the purpose of education, but also that definition of just, I suppose, a glossary of terms. What does learning mean? What does education mean? What does all of these things mean? Because ultimately, you could probably ask everybody on this call, probably a whole school's worth of information from leaders to educators across. And it could be by country, it can be even school by school. And you'd ask them the question, and really, I think you'd probably get really varied understanding and definitions, and based on own experiences, own perceptions, and also people's approaches and what they believe in. And I think it's that thing of, well, actually, in the world of AI, we talk about it now, and the acceleration of that ultimately human intelligence, but the ability to learn, not just remember, but the ability to apply to context, to really start to empathize, apply, all of those different things are really, really key. And for me, personally, learning is the ability to take something, to be excited by something, to understand something, but also to understand the context. And I think, Ben, you tell a story, don't you, of one of your daughters that ultimately could regurgitate and recite information, but didn't really understand where it came from on its context or its meaning. It's like, well, what is the point in knowing something? Yeah. Not knowing something in terms of knowing information, but you don't know what the information is, the why of the information, anything else. We just focus on that bit.
And that element of like the information being an end in itself is not a wrong thing. Like knowing facts is something, like it means that but I think I love what you said there about that real learning. There is is actually that ability to be able to apply that into different contexts to make it make sense, not just be able to regurgitate it. And obviously we've talked about assessment there. We've by default, haven't we? We're saying the assessment model is rewarding those people who can regurgitate facts and to memorize things, as opposed to can you use this in a different way, which is what I think the maker stuff that you talk about, whatever level that looks like, is allowing people to manipulate something to be used in a different way, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true. And also with teachers, I usually say, because there are some teachers who just like parents, right? Where they're like, I don't have paint in my house. I don't have glitter. I don't, because it makes a mess. And that's fine, because it's not for everybody. So just like we say, one size doesn't fit all for kids, one size doesn't fit all for teachers. So finding your version of that to kind of, and like you said, Steve, everybody has a different understanding of what learning is. And I think that that's okay. We don't all have to agree on what learning is, because it depends on what your learning experience was, where you live, like you mentioned. But understanding that learning is richer than just regurgitation, and then finding your version of how to do that in your classroom for your kids, I think is maybe the goal.
Yeah, and you alluded to it when I asked the question in regards to the changing tide, and rather than you feel like you swim in, not maybe with the tide, but it's basically that you're not against it, which makes it simpler. But I suppose from your perspective, what does education in Canada look like, and maybe is there any learning that we can take from there that really is strong that can apply to the rest of the world in context? I know you can't always just look at a nation and say, or a state and go, well, that's really good, let's apply it somewhere else. But maybe talk at that for a bit, that might be strong.
Yeah, it's interesting because here there's definitely shifts, but here our education is controlled by provinces. So not just by Canada as a whole, but each individual province decides what the kids are learning, what the school systems look like, do they have access to extra educational supports. So in our province, it's a little bit tumultuous right now because they've taken a lot of that funding and supports away from schools. And the curriculum, although it's changed and it's better, is still very content based. So it's not as based on skills as maybe I think teachers would like, but it's getting better slowly. So for us, a lot of the issue is I think a lot of teachers know the value in some of these like technologies and things like that, and they want to use them. They just maybe don't necessarily know how. And the ed tech sector in Canada is, again, I could be completely off base here, but it's not as big as it is in other places, like down in the States, for example, or like over I'm not sure how it is in the UK, but it seems bigger than it is here. So there's not as many people talking about it, or there are, but it's just so big and we're so spread out that it's hard to build that community here. But one thing that I will say that other provinces have done, and we're starting to do better, is that rooting in older knowledge, like Indigenous knowledge. So bringing kids back to the land, talking about Indigenous practice and ways of knowing and things like that. We're really starting to bring that back. And I think that is so helpful for kids to be getting outside, learning about the actual space in which they live, not just other spaces around the world, or what everything else. That's important too, but the actual community in which they live, I think if we can focus on that, especially with the younger students, they can then build that understanding and broaden, right? Because, if you ask a kindergartner about the map, sometimes they might know some places, but they also don't necessarily understand the place where they live. So I think that we're doing a good job in starting to focus on that in maybe kindergarten or grade 1 when kids are 5 and 6. And then they feel sort of more connected to their community, which is really great when we do those design thinking challenges. So when I do the design thinking challenges, I like to, with the younger kids especially, and with the older kids too, but root them in the community. So yeah, we're design thinking and we're building things and it's fun and it's awesome, but we're looking at it as more of a solution. So how can we be problem solvers? How can we find the problems too? Not just me telling you what the problem is and you come up with a solution, but what's the problem that you notice? So building those kinds of observational skills too is key. So I think that's good.
Yeah, and I spotted some bits that you'd done, and I know that we'll talk about some of the things that you talked about in your Innovate EDU Ignite, which was cracking, by the way. I know I said that to you straight afterwards, but the way that you position the idea of fun and the importance of fun, we'll definitely come back to that in a minute. But one of your design thinking tools that I saw or examples was the thing with the villains.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's really cool. Like for those of us in education who are just may well be weary of, here is a curriculum, you need to deliver that curriculum, you've got to pass this assignment, okay, next, move to the next year. The way that you're using design thinking in that space, maybe talk to us a little bit about what that practically looks like, because it's actually a real thing.
Yeah, so the video with the villains was the where they have to design a way to catch the hero. Is that right? Yeah. So how this came up for me was I've had a couple teachers say, "Well, I don't teach science, so I don't need to do like design thinking and STEAM and stuff like that. I don't teach science. I don't teach math." I'm like, okay, but like you can do it really easily with your literacy. And it could be a lot of fun because storybook characters have problems all the time. That's the whole point of the story, is that there's some sort of pain point or issue or need for growth. And same with, social studies and history and things like that. So you can throw it in. It doesn't, just because it's not in the curriculum doesn't mean it's not valuable. So that's how that started. Was I was like, okay, we design things for heroes all the time. What if we flipped it? And instead you were a villain, because going back to the idea of fun, how much fun is that for kids? Where now they're the villain, right? And also in my class, when I had to teach reading comprehension skills. So having kids break down a story and find different pieces and evidence to support their claims and things. So I used to turn my classroom into Disneyland. But the villains took over. So I would do it around Halloween time. And so the kids, again, didn't know. I love the element of surprise. It's just as fun for me as it is for them. So I'm literally like, bye, have a great day, closed door, locked door. And then and the decorations are really minimal because I have 2 kids and not a lot of time. But I had some black lights going on, and then they would show up and I'd say, the villains took over. Here's what we have to do. So they each picked one, and then they had to read the story like that, Snow White or whatever, that story. And they had to charge the villain with a crime and provide evidence from the text to support their claim. So they were essentially like prosecutors. And they got so into it. And I found that it worked so well. And it was one day, and I would hit like 4 or 5 of these reading comprehension outcomes for my literacy units. And it was amazing. So that's kind of, it all ties together with like, how can we engage these kids into thinking for themselves, I guess, is really the root of it in any subject area. Because I don't like that they're all in silos, but I get it.
I love the whole story. The excitement that it gives you is a really interesting concept. The spark is clearly there, because if you do, so many teachers are probably just somebody was talking about yesterday. I can't remember what it was, but they were talking about silent quitting.
Yeah.
How many people in education have silently quit and are just maintaining just because they don't know what else to do? They've lost their passion, everything else. So to see that spark and the passion still there when you're in the classroom and working with learners is really positive to hear and see. But I think what's also great about that story, and shouldn't be missed, is everybody talks about education being time poor. That there is no money in education, but there's also nobody's got enough time. Yeah. But the thing that you actually called out there is, I could probably have done better with decorations, but I've got 2 kids and I've got a busy life. So ultimately, it's that call out of actually, you can make a change, you can do something different. Everybody has time limitations as educators, regardless of what nation you're in, or even what sector of education you're in within that nation. But ultimately, you can do something. It might be the fact that you just don't do it as well, or you would like to do more if you had more time. But at least it's a start. But ultimately, it's not about the props.
No.
It's about the excitement and ultimately the story that you just told. And within there, great, they've made progress in learning and all this other stuff. But ultimately, I can just, when you were telling that story, I'm thinking, I can see how excited you're getting. Mm-hmm. What I'd love to see is how excited the learners got. Like, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in that space, because they must absolutely love it. If some of the other people are just get them to read the same stuff, but read out of a book, oh my God, they must love coming to the lesson.
Like, it's amazing what a locked door with a time on it can do. Like, do not enter until 8:15. And then you come out, or music, the lights are off. Like, it's so easy to just change it a little bit, but you have to sell it too. You can't come out and be like, okay, I made you a surprise, open door, and then they don't know what to do. You have to sell it. So, and again, that I'm naturally excitable. So it kind of comes easy to me. So that's why I'm always like, whatever your thing is, just do it, because the kids do, like you said, they feed off of it. They can feel your excitement in whatever it is. Like, we had one teacher in a school who had a bunch of crazy animals, and the kids, there were lizards all over the walls, and the kids loved it. And he didn't do any of the things I did, but the kids were still excited to be in his class for other reasons, right? So, yeah.
I think regardless of what you teach, even how you teach it per se, is around, one of the key fundamentals is excitement, passion, and lighting a fire underneath, not literally, lighting that fire in the children's belly, to really think, oh, I want that passion. And it might be something that ultimately some of those people don't carry that passion and don't find that love for your subject or the way that you do it. But hopefully, teachers in other classrooms, in different parts of the hallway, in different parts of the school, will ignite that fire in those children's bellies to learn. Because ultimately, isn't that what learning is? It's driving a passion for people to explore and be curious and all those things around a subject or a particular thing that might only just be a 5-minute nugget that you give them. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, once you do that, there is no homework, there is no progress, there is no, all of those kind of things go out the window, because it's been driven with student and learner agency by just lighting that fire and that spark to the learners. And I think that's where
you want to start singing Billy Joel here, don't you? I can see it.
Like, it's just like, it sounds so simple.
It was already burning. It was always burning.
I came out of the classroom, and people always say about people in the classroom, Joe, you couldn't hack it. You know what? Looking at it, I was having dinner with a friend who is no longer in education and would love to, if the money was right and the chap would go back into it. But if somebody said that to me, I don't know whether I'd want to go in the back into the classroom, but I think it would be easy for me to leave, as easy for you to go back in. You clearly have a drive and a passion to educate in the classroom, and we need more people like you and create structures to allow you to do more of that, rather than feel that you need to do more PD and step out of the classroom, because ultimately, be a leader, Megan. And you're like, I don't want to be a leader. I want to be an educator, just be a good one. Yeah, but if you want more money, more responsibility, that's what. And I think it's that. We need more people. And I think we're just trying to think what book it's from. I think it's from No Rules Rules. And they classified as leaders rock stars and superstars.
Oh, yeah.
So superstars are the ones that are going to progress, going to go on, and they're destined for that. But actually, in any business, in education, it's the same. We need rock star teachers that just want to be unbelievable teachers, but just earn an unbelievable wage. Why do we only say you can only earn more money if you step out of the classroom? Mm-hmm. We need people with you, like you, that really have passion for inspiring those young people. I've lost that passion, but we need people like you. Absolutely.
Thanks. I appreciate that. And you know what? So this year I did step out of the classroom because I felt myself starting to lose it because of the time and all of the things. So I'm right there with the burnout club all over the place. But it was really, like you said, and I appreciate it. It was really nice once I was able to kind of find my footing again. It was nice to know that it's still there. And that I really do enjoy, as much as I love doing PD with teachers, and it's so much fun, and I get so much value out of that too, because I feel like then they can take that back. Like with the microbit sessions that I just did in Johannesburg, I know that they're going to take some of that back to their own classrooms, and you can spread the joy and excitement that way. But there's something different about being with your, not just any group of kids, but your group of kids.
I would totally agree with that. And it lights your fire as well, doesn't it? Like when you've got that ability to see it in them. Like I taught religious studies philosophy. You probably know that already. And it's not everybody's cup of tea. Or can of beer or whatever else your tipple is. Like, it's not everybody's, but I very much love it, and I love debating those deep philosophy. You've probably saw me deep in conversations with Ken on a semi-regular basis. We've been doing it again recently on WhatsApp. Like, with that, I love those kind of conversations. Steve, like, mate, can we just like talk about football or school or kids or something? Like, why are we talking about Kant again? Why are we talking about Aquinas is this and some kind of hypothetical? I enjoy, but when you are passionate about it and you grab that passion into kids or ignite some passion in there, it's like that cycle you were saying it, I think, Steve, that like it feeds your fire feeds them, and it just becomes a place that you're excited about. And one of the things that's tied to that, I think, is obviously, again, in a similar way, we'd been in Twitter groups together. I've seen what you've been doing across the pond. Knew that we were going to be at Innovate EDU together, and obviously we're out in Johannesburg in just. It's not that long ago, is it? It's about 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. It feels like forever ago. I feel like I've been everywhere else since.
Not jet lag anymore.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, well, I'm not sure. I'm on the same time zone. Johannesburg is on the same time zone, but because I went out via Saudi, it wasn't on the same time, so it screwed me all up. But not quite as bad as Edmonton. I understand that. But what really landed for me when we were in Johannesburg together, you did an Ignite session and you talked about fun, and we've alluded to this already, and you talk about why it's important to have fun, and I know that comes in from what we've just talked about there, but I wonder if you could maybe talk a little bit about the fun piece, especially some of the examples, because I think some of our listeners are just going to get excited about the fact that the way that you taught certain things, like the cornucopia one, for example, or others. Just this, and you said the same thing you said that Steve picked up on. I've got kids. I can't do all the things that I used to do. Like, life is full, but we made it fun and we did this. Maybe just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, you know what? That Ignite session was, again, so much fun because I found myself when I have to talk about things and I ask, what do you want me to talk about? And someone says, whatever you want. I'm like, those are too many choices. I need you to tell me. But it turned out so well. And I was so excited because I didn't actually plan out exactly what I wanted to say. I just had some things together. And that was the first. Well, I don't usually plan out what I'm going to say because I find that it goes better. But I was just kind of pleasantly surprised, I guess. So fun has been another one of those things where I felt like I was against the tide and I just didn't understand. I was like, don't we want them to have fun? They're kids. Like, they're kids for this little bit, and they have to spend all day with us, and nobody really knows why it's so long. But this is the way it is. And so I feel like it's been so important to me that kids enjoy their day at school more than anything. Like, you can Google half of this stuff that we have to learn throughout the school year in 30 minutes. So let's focus on the skills and let's have fun doing it in a way that matters to you, because really being a kid is all about playing. And that's how they process things. That's how they problem solve. That's how they work with each other and collaborate, is all through play. So giving them those situations in which they can do this is great. And it also works well for us because, like you said, the cornucopia was kids had to edit their stories. And I had spent so much time like beating my head against a wall being like, we have to edit the story. And they go, absolutely. And they grab their highlighter and they're like, this one's good. I'm done. What's next? And I'm like, you didn't edit it though. Obviously. So I was thinking, and how this happened was the kids were actually, Hunger Games had come out, the movie, and we found out through supervisors that they were actually playing Hunger Games at recess. And at first we were concerned.
With no death. I'm hoping with no death. Please can we have that caveat?
No death. No death. So we were like, oh no, the parent emails alone are going to be crazy. So we, had to have a big talk about Hunger Games and just sort of that whole, like, what's real, what's not, what's fiction. And they said, they're like, Miss, we just have fun building the bow and arrows. And I was like, I'm sorry, you're what? Because our school backed onto like a wooded area. So they told me that they were stealing string from my makerspace, and they were taking them outside and tying it at sticks, and they were trying to make bow and arrows to be like Katniss from the Hunger Games. So I'm like, that level of commitment alone, I have that thing locked down, and I had no idea that they were stealing string from me. So like, I'm upset, but I'm also impressed at this point, because that was some serious innovation. I'm easily distractible too, but just the fact that they were able to do that. And I was like, man, they must really like this if they're willing to spend their recess. Like, they weren't planning the deaths of others. Thank goodness they didn't take it that far. But like, running around with these makeshift bow and arrows trying to like catch people. So I thought, there's got to be some way that I can bring this in. Anytime I catch on to an interest, like it was Among Us a while ago and these different things, I'm like, how can I bring this in? So I am also a Hunger Games fan, and I thought of the cornucopia, and I was like, oh, and it always is like a last minute switch for me. So I set it up. I set in the Ignite. I set it up at lunchtime. It took me 20 minutes tops because that's what I had. So I stole some pylons from the gymnasium. I made a circle. I threw a bunch of markers and pens and stuff in the middle, but there weren't enough for all of the kids. That was the Hunger Games-esque thing. So there were like, we were 5 short, because I knew that for those 5, if they couldn't grab a pen, they had to do some sort of task to earn one. So I had them do, a couple of them I knew were designy kids, so I had them build something. A couple I knew would never do it, so I had them do push-ups because they were like really athletic kids. So I'm like, hey, you got to do 20 push-ups. So then the kids came in, same thing, locked door, because that's my move, with the Hunger Games theme music playing in the background. And I said, oh, we're actually in this room today because I needed more space. And they were like, oh, instant, right? Like, we're in a different room. We're in a different space. Yep. Come on over here. And then I set them all up, and they could tell by the music and by the shape of the room that they were going to do something Hunger Games esque. And I just made like a little one slide thing that said, the writing games made the odds be ever in your favor. Like, again, 3 minutes while I was like eating my lunch. So they all had to go around, and then I had the time, like the countdown from the movie, and they all had to run to the middle, but I had also thrown their stories all over. We were in the Learning Commons, like library space. So I had thrown their stories all over. I had hid them. Took me 45 seconds, and they had to find them with their partners, grab a writing utensil, and get to work. And they had like a checklist of what to do. So normally I would have them in the classroom with the checklist. But when we added that little bit of extra 7 minutes of fun at the start, they fully edited their stories, because they knew if I came around and they weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing, they were going to have to do some sort of task. So it was just fun.
So you were basically President Snow, punishing them for not working hard enough.
100%.
Did anybody like volunteer as tribute or anything like that? No.
And my benchmark, this sounds terrible if you don't know me, but my benchmark is always like, is someone going to cry or not? Because, sometimes I push it too far, and there's the kid who's like, I don't like this. And then I'm like, you're close to crying. We're going to take it out. So you're over here, or I'll pull them aside and I'll say, hey, this is just a game. It doesn't have to be your game. That's fine. Here's your little, go be happy over here. That's okay. Because I know, like, my daughter is a very sensitive, empathetic human being. She would freak out if I did this to her as her teacher. She would be like, no, I am not running towards things. There's a countdown. There's music. I'm way overwhelmed. So there are always those kids. But I think as a teacher, you're aware of those kids, and you're able to kind of pull them aside and make it special for them too, in a way that's not quite as intense as the other ones might enjoy.
I don't know what to say. I think listening to that story, the thing that probably really resonates is that you are allowed to take risks. Your organisation and the structure around you allows you to explore, take risks positively, because ultimately people, you take risks, it goes on. We're taking a risk negatively with children's futures, from what we're currently doing anyway.
Yeah.
But I think all of the structures, AI can can get you to do a lesson plan. Did you need to do a lesson plan? You know, oh, well, we'll talk through your aims and outcomes and we'll do a STAR activity and everything. But actually, when you structure and you don't think about the shackles of what potentially we've now created in education that takes so much time and say, well, I created a slide and I got this and I did this. Ultimately, it allowed you to be creative in terms of what the learning and the fun element and the journey would be during the lesson, rather than all the stuff that actually has no impact, really, let's be honest, on the learner. It's more about the dance and the structure that's for outside of the classroom and for everybody else to check.
Yeah.
And that's the bit that screams for me. I was like, you focused on the things that you had time to do and the things that would make the biggest difference in learning in that classroom and the most fun thing, rather than all of the stuff that probably teachers are wasting their, not wasting, it's really bad wasting their time, that they're spending more time doing when really it has no impact on the learning that's taking place in the classroom.
Yeah. And you know what? Like from an AI perspective, if you know your kids and you know an interest, type that into ChatGPT or whatever, right? My kids are really into Minecraft. I have to do a lesson on this. Generate some ideas for me. Like if you're having trouble, because again, when we're burnt out, it is really hard to come up with those ideas. Let it do the work for you and then pick your favorite and be like, oh, that's cool. Like which one sparks you? And then you're going to be able, if it sparks you, you're going to be able to sell that to your kids. Right?
Yeah, sorry, Ben, because ultimately, not everybody has what you have in regards to the ability to see something that's happening in recess or the break, apply that, be creative. I get that. Some people work differently and they're wonderful at other things. But with AI now, you could then say, the learners are interested in this. I want to do something. You can put that in. And ultimately, in seconds, it would create something very, very simple that allows them to be creative. It might be that they're normally creative, but they're just running out of that creative steam. They're tired. The kids have had them. Whatever's happening, or whether you're just not that creative at all, and that's fine as well. But ultimately, AI helps it to make sure that I've got learners that have got this experience on this, and they wouldn't respond to this. What else could I do differently to just consider those all of those things now can be done so quickly that would take such a long period of time and the most effort rather than the actual doing of creating the space and the mechanisms around it.
And also tied to that is the fact that when you mentioned there about burnout and teacher workload, and it's about the teacher in a room is the resource, still the resource that is irreplaceable. I've said in some places AI will replace teachers, because I think it will replace teachers who don't use it, and I think it will replace some teachers, but it won't replace that element of a teacher that knows their students, that can look in their eyes, that can make an experience fit. And just because an AI can then give you an example about basketball for forces from Notebook LM does not mean that you can then look at it. It can give you a different way, but you work with it as a good educator, and it's powerful, and that's what I think we're talking about here is that the passion that comes from education. AI can give us time and passion back, but also we leverage, then that gives us back that spark that makes us human, that then sets that fire again. And it feels like this is the thing in the arsenal that might help there. I just want to really mention really quickly before we get to our quick fire question. And I know that you did a couple of sessions on these in South Africa as well, in that you're passionate about microbits, right? And now neither me or Steve are computing specialists, but the microbits have had people love them, right? Maybe tell us a little bit about your experience with them and why you're passionate about using them and why you think they're a good things for people to talk about in that space.
Yeah. Oh man, microbits are like, I mean, I've done Makey's and I've done there's a Vex robot like right there. And I've done all of it. And we've had all the toys. I was really lucky in my last school. We had everything that we could have wanted. We have a huge STEM budget just for that magical unicorn year. But these microbits, the more I got to see them, the more I could use that one tool in so many different aspects. Because what I found was it was almost like a mental load issue, where it was like, okay, we're going to use this tool, and now we're going to use this tool, and the kids have to create an account and log in and all of the things. But microbit, they could become really proficient with their coding, And again, it goes back to fun, where I think about, kids can learn coding through like code.org and the tutorials. But if they're actually making something or doing something, they're going to really enjoy coding and see where it's used and not just how to do it. So the microbit is filled with a bunch of sensors. And so for the science classroom in particular, I found it was so nice because either I would code it and the kids would use it for an experiment. It was like a tool. So we didn't have to necessarily have the thermometers and all of the things. We could use this. It was more engaging for the kids because they weren't familiar with using them. So like, what is this cool thing? It's got buttons. I love it. And it's just, the more I used it, the more I could find ways to use it. So I told the story in my microbit session about the day that we were doing an egg drop. Do you guys know egg drops where you build the parachute and stuff? So we were doing a testing day and then like the real competition, because we had a balcony at this school. So we were going to drop it outside on the balcony, and I forgot the eggs because I'm absent-minded. So I show up at school and I go, oh no, I've got to teach all day. I had, 4 classes, no eggs. So I was in trouble. And then right last second, I was like, oh my gosh, we can use the microbits because they've got an accelerometer and they can sense how hard they hit the ground. So obviously you don't want it to break, but in a situation where you're creating like a little thing to protect an egg, it was perfect. So I got them to code. I taught them how to code the accelerometer, and it senses different G's. So we had to kind of test it to make it the right sensitivity. So that was a little bit of reiteration, trial and error with the kids because I hadn't done it before. So I always tell teachers, like, you don't have to be the expert. You can literally be like, we're going to do this. What do we do? Let's work it out. Who figured it out? That kind of thing. So then we used those and we put them in our little egg cup things that they had built to protect the eggs. We dropped them off of the balcony, and then they had coded them to be either pass or fail with like an X icon or a check mark icon. And it was great. It took the whole class, which also I love as a teacher. Like when I can take up the whole amount of time with this activity that we're engaged with the whole time. So good. And I didn't have to go run to the store and get eggs at lunch. I could actually sit and eat my lunch that day. And it was just amazing. And so I was really hooked from then on, and I've found ways to kind of incorporate it in. Like I had one watering my plants for a little while. I'm always, anything that I'm making, I'm like, how could we use the microbit for this? And I love, because, we all have limited budgets and stuff. So if you have your set, you can use it for so many things.
Yes. Now, I haven't played with them, but feel like I now should.
You should.
And I know that one of my daughters has got one because we bought one. So maybe there's no excuse. So we'll go with that.
Egg drop challenge at the weekend.
Egg drop challenge. No, I like eating eggs. These don't happen by themselves, right?
So you don't need to because you do it
yes,
about
I don't
the
need
egg.
eggs. I can waste the eggs.
Yeah.
Now, my friend Mike has chickens now, so he gets 3 eggs a day anyway, 4 eggs a day. So maybe I can just borrow some of them. If you're ever struggling for eggs, just let me know. I'll post some over. Anyway, we always do. We always do quickfire questions, but Meagan, I hope you haven't been listening and been planning for quickfire questions because we've got a brand new set of them for you. First time that these have ever been used. The quickfire questions, we're rubbish at being quickfire about them, but we know that you will definitely follow the rules of quickfire.
I'm excellent at following rules, as you can tell.
Yes. Okay. So the first question is this. I'll do one, Steve will do one, then I'll do a third one. So if schools were judged like restaurants by how much customers actually enjoy the experience, what would change overnight?
Okay. Well, I love the restaurant aspect because there would be choices. And what would they change overnight? I mean, if you were judged by a school on your quality, you know what, though? I feel like this could go the other way. Because so teachers would have to change, but then what is the parameter in which they need to change? Are we going traditional? Are we going like 21st century learners? I feel like depending on the administrator, that could be good or that could be not good.
An interesting one. Maybe it could be like a food hall where you can give any meal or any kind of style rather than just being an Italian or a particular
Yeah,
focus
like would we
restaurant.
all have
Anyway,
to conform?
I'm not good at quick fire. Why am I going away? Why am I not being quick fire? Okay. What's the most dangerous myth that educators tell themselves to avoid real change?
That it takes too much time.
Lovely. And finally, the final quickfire question is, if a 10-year-old, it doesn't have to be your 10-year-old or a 10-year-old, asked you why they have to go to school, what would you actually say?
To find out, okay,
Why they have to go to school?
Okay,
What would you say?
I would say I've actually been asked this question. And I said, it's not about learning the stuff that you're learning about at school. It's about finding out about things you didn't know about. So I said, how do you know what you like if you haven't tried a bunch of stuff?
Love it. Love it.
I was so fast.
That was really awkward. It felt really awkward because we were trying to be quick fire and none of us want to be quick fire.
None of us want to be
So,
quick fire.
yeah,
We all want to say something.
we're all waiting to go. Can we elaborate? Can we elaborate? Can we elaborate? But it was at least. Do you know what? I think I expected it, but this is one of the one of the highest energy podcasts that we've done for a while.
Oh.
You have brought the energy, and we've reflected that energy and responded to that energy, which has been really, really good.
Oh.
I've absolutely loved it. I think my parting shot is, and I know that you've stepped out, you're doing more PD. We need more educators globally like you. We need educators and PD rock stars in education. I left it, but we need people like you because ultimately you inspire me. You've inspired me during the podcast, and I think that's what we need. We
100%.
need education to inspire each other and stop allowing people to or making people want to leave for whatever reason, because the spark will go. The way that you talk about the spark with learners, I'm sure it lights the spark with educators around you as well. So I've loved
Yeah, me too.
the podcast.
It's been great.
It's been great to have you on finally. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate
Amazing.
it. And thanks
Well,
for having me on and letting me talk as much as I want, except for during those rapid fire ones where I wasn't allowed to talk as much as I wanted.
See?
You could tell.
Do you know what we did? We gave you options. We gave you choice and autonomy. And also what we've done is we know that you share a podcast with somebody that also likes to speak, so we gave you the opportunity just to speak on your own, right? We love you, Abid. We're not creating a podcast without you, my friend. Thank you, Meagan, for joining us on the Edufuturists podcast. This is going out and it'll be out just before Edufuturist Uprising 2025. Exciting times. We've got 150 educators in Manchester celebrating that cool stuff. And we are getting ready for the big 300 number for Edufuturists, which is Edufuturist episode 300. We've got something special planned. We are looking forward to sharing that with the world. But it has been a fantastic conversation, and we know that lots and lots of people are going to love this. Thanks for joining us all the way from Edmonton in Canada. Meagan, thank you.
Shaping